You are listening to the Vincast, Australia's premier wine podcast, where we talk all about the world of wine. Every week I invite a guest who is a winemaker, sommelier, merchant or wine writer, and we talk about their background, their story, their journey that led them to what they do today. Of course, we talk about wines from all over the world, just like today's guest. But if you listen regularly, you'll know that I talk a lot about Australian wine and a really fantastic one-stop shop for authentic artisan Australian wine is Different Drop, where you can buy a whole range of really exciting, dynamic wines produced by some really up-and-coming winemakers. And when you go to the Different Drop website, make sure you are using the special code INTREPIDWINO, one word, to make sure that you get a 10% discount off any purchase. Thank you guys for listening to this episode, and thanks Different Drop for your support of the podcast. On episode 85 of the Vincast, I chat with Judy Chan, owner and operator of the Grace Vineyard, located in the Shanxi region of China. Hello there, Vincasters, and welcome to another episode of the Vincast. My name is James Gaspbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. It has been fantastic to have people getting in touch with me to let me know how much they've been enjoying the podcast, particularly those who got in touch about the most recent episode with Walter Speller, wine writer based in Italy and the UK, specializing in Italian wine, but also has a great interest in Italian grape varieties, particularly those grown here in Australia. So very much topics very close to my heart. Now, I would like to send a special shout out to Lee Tran Lam, who is the host of the Unbearable Lightness of Being Hungry podcast. She's based in Sydney. The podcast is not dissimilar to the Vincast in that every episode she talks with a different guest about their background, their philosophies. But she talks in the world of food. So very commonly she has chefs. Sometimes she has, like for example, the most recent episode, a coffee roaster. And she's spoken to some really, really amazing chefs. So I do highly recommend that. And the reason I'm giving her a shout out is because in the last episode, she gave me a shout out at the end of the episode. So thank you very much for that. Now, for this week, I'm continuing my series that I recorded around the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. My guest was actually at one of the wine tastings over the weekend of the festival, and I got to sit in on tasting, showing her wines from China. So Judy Chan is the owner and operator of Grace Vineyard, which is a winery that's gaining very, very quickly a reputation for producing very high quality wines in the Shanxi region of China. So it was really interesting to chat with her about her journey and get some insight into not only Chinese wine, but also the Chinese wine market. So I hope you enjoy the episode. Please stick around to the end so you can find out how to get in contact with myself and Judy to share your impressions. But until then, I'll see you on the other side. Judy,
yes.
Thank you very much for making some time whilst you're here in Australia to sit down with me on the Vincast.
My pleasure.
Welcome. Is this your first time in Australia?
No, not my first time, but only my second time to Melbourne.
Okay. What brought you to Melbourne the last time?
Last time was visiting wineries in Melbourne, and of course wine and dine again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's always a very happy feelings to be in Melbourne.
Absolutely. So I usually start each episode of my podcast by asking my guest if they can remember when it was, like if they can remember when they first interacted with wine and when they thought, this might be something that I'd like to dedicate myself to?
My first interaction with wine was a little bit of a culture shock. When I grew up in Hong Kong, we always understand that Western etiquette is that if you put something in your mouth, you're not supposed to spit.
Okay.
So I went to, I think, Burgundy with my dad when we went to visit winery. So they pour for you to taste. I drink every single glass. I was 12.
Yeah. Wow.
And then I passed out in no time. Because I thought, you're not supposed to spit. It's impolite.
Of course.
And that's how that was my first memory about wine. And I never thought that I would be in the industry.
No.
I didn't drink at all, not even beer, until I joined running Grace.
Okay. So what was your family's business that allowed you to have the opportunity to visit Burgundy when you were 12?
My dad used to be a trader for raw material, like commodity, with the French company.
Okay.
So he went to France very early on.
Yes.
And I think that's when he was introduced to wine. But he was never, I wouldn't say he was a wine lover.
No.
Not even now. I mean, but then I think he was introduced to it, and then it attracted him because he told me that he felt that was a very civilized way of living.
Yes.
That you have a glass of wine and have dinners or meals. And so
he was very much into the concept of having wine with food or having a beverage with food.
He loved that feelings, but he himself doesn't practice that.
Okay. He was interested though.
He was interested. He was intrigued by it. And then when his one of his best friend, who's a French guy, retired, and he invited my dad to co-invest in winery in France. Mm-hmm. They went to visit many wineries, and I think none of them are making money.
Okay.
So my father is like, as a traditional businessman, he said that he counter offer his friends. It's why not we build something in China?
Sure.
At that time, China didn't have high quality wine at the time.
Had anyone talked about? Had anyone introduced the idea about producing
of course.
quality
There
wine
was
in China?
like state-owned wineries, three big one: Dynasty, Great Wall, and Zhangyi.
Okay.
Back then, but
is the Great Wall Winery attached to the Great Wall Car Company?
No,
completely different.
Completely different. But it's just Great Wall is a catchy name.
Sure, of course. I mean, Great Wall is one of the most famous things about China.
Exactly. So, but they were producing for mass market, relatively lower end wine.
Okay.
But each of them, I mean, Great Wall and Zhangyi was producing 150 million bottles a year.
Yes. Well, I know that I was very interested to see that. I think China's the 6th or 7th largest producer of wine in the world.
No, but back then wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's back then when my dad started the winery was a very new concept. Mm-hmm. I remember when I first start tasting with clients from local province.
Yes.
They were asking me, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And then if they know wine, they thought about the tears. How they judge whether wine is good is whether there is tears on the glass.
We call that the legs.
Oh, we call legs, and in China we call the tears.
Yeah, I think that's actually a better description. I think a better name for it.
I guess. But the funny thing is that, and then that's the only judgment whether the wine is good. And I told them it's basically only mean the sugar level. Honey water have a lot of tears on the glass as well.
You'd be surprised to hear. You might be surprised to hear that typically was what was considered to be the standard of quality. I mean, my parents would swirl the glass of wine, and they would look and they would say, "Oh, this is a good wine because the legs move very slowly." And it was years later I realized
China was like that.
Yeah, okay. Oh. So I thought an important part of that was also the alcohol. Yes. And I thought that's why they like it so much, is because there's more alcohol in that wine.
Possible. I think yes. So that's how we started, and then my father built the winery with his friends, more as a retirement project, so to say. But unfortunately,
not uncommon at all in wine, really.
Everybody's doing that, right?
Well, I mean,
in a way,
around Melbourne, Mornington Peninsula, Yarra Valley, to a certain extent Geelong. A lot of the early, well, not early, but in the 70s and to a lesser extent in the 1980s, they were professionals, doctors, lawyers. They planted a vineyard as a hobby, and then they completely dedicated themselves after they retired from their professional career.
Yeah, I remember my father telling me that, okay, always tell people that we're doing this for a hobby. I said, Dad, why are we telling people that we're doing for a hobby? Clearly, it is not your hobby and not mine. I didn't drink wine. I said, why are we telling the people it's a hobby? My dad said, we're in business. When your business doesn't make money, you tell people you're doing it for a hobby.
Yeah, that way that you won't be judged if it happens to fail.
Yes, exactly that. So, but his friends introduced all these expert choosing the location, having the vines and everything. But they got a Chinese consultant to do the business studies.
Okay.
And the study advised them that if you want to break even, the minimum size that you have to go for is 4 million bottles.
Wow.
It's judging from that existing producers in China,
of course,
based on that,
when
they were doing
studies,
150 million bottles.
Right? Sure, of course.
And selling at a very low price. But my dad was conservative, so he did 1 million bottles.
Right.
1 million bottles is still a lot. So when my father invited me on board, I was like, 1 million bottles? Seriously? What are you going to do? He said, I'm going to drink. I said, Dad, think about it. It's like 365 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that you have to drink over more than 1,000 bottles. Or give away 1,000 bottles every day. And I don't think you have that many friends.
Unless your father is Gerard Depardieu, I don't think you could drink that much wine in one day.
No. And to be honest, to give away for free when your wine is no name and
Yes.
it's from China, is hard.
Yeah, of course.
People take your bottle was your friend.
Here, people love it. Oh, clean skin, sure. Free bottles of wine, no problem. But there, it's like, no. It needs to have a mark on it. It has to have a brand.
Yes, and it's heavy.
Yeah, of course. So, whereabouts did you actually grow up?
I was born and raised in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And then I went to the States for college.
Oh, really? What did you study?
Women's studies, psychology, and organizational studies.
Women's studies. Well, I must say, happy International Women's
Yes,
Day.
I know. What is that? What is that? Is it a new holiday?
I don't know. Maybe
I just heard it today.
Well, I don't know if it is international, really, but I don't know. Maybe someone suddenly went, "Oh, women! Oh, we should have a day for them."
Yeah.
That seems strange.
Interesting. But anyway.
So, how did you enjoy living in the United States? What was your life like there?
It was very different. I went to Michigan. I was in Midwest in the state, and the first thing I noticed is super cold.
Yeah.
It's 30 below zero.
But it gets pretty hot in summer as well, doesn't it?
It's hot, but it's dry, so
Yeah,
it's
okay,
fine. Hong Kong is like humid hot. It's
Sure.
different. So the first thing I noticed is the cold weather is so painful. When the wind chill blows
It
your
stings
face,
your face, yeah.
you can't even cry because they would turn to ice immediately.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. The other thing is that I didn't know that life could be so different. When you move to another country, it challenged a lot of your values. A
Yeah.
lot of things that I thought was common sense wasn't common sense.
Sure.
So it changed my life. It's quite interesting.
You'd done a bit of traveling before that, but I'm assuming possibly with your family or maybe with friends?
We travel a lot. I mean, I've been to many countries and move around a lot. Not move around, but travel. But when you live in a country, it's different than when you just visit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you were living in the US, actually before that, was food important in your family when you were growing up?
Food wasn't that important. I think
Apart from just, for energy to live.
it's to survive, right?
Yeah.
To live. But that's actually the interesting things. My parents are not into wine. My parents are not into food.
Okay.
And don't ask me why we are in this industry. But now I'm so into food and wine. For
Yeah.
me, it's so important. Every trip that I planned, I would pre-book the restaurants.
Wow.
Yes. All my trips is around food and wine.
So what about when you were living in the United States? Did you start to, try other foods, or was that an interesting experience?
No, Michigan is
Not well known for it.
America is not very known for food to start with. It's big portion.
Apart from a few places like New
San
York.
Francisco, New York.
Yeah.
But Michigan definitely not. It's just big portion.
Yep.
Applebee's for us was like a treat.
Okay.
And no, but I think the only adventurous cuisine that I had was me and American Jewish friends.
Mm-hmm.
We try to make Indian food even though we never had Indian food.
Yeah.
And there was no shop to sell all the ingredients.
Yeah.
So we keep substituting with whatever we can find. And it turned out, I don't think it's Indian food, but we were just like super happy with the Indian food that we cooked.
Oh, great. So when you came back to Hong Kong, was it part of China at that point? Was it back
Hanover already.
Okay.
I came back in 2000.
What were you doing when you returned?
I was in between just graduate from college and going to grad school.
Yeah.
And grad school only start 9 months later.
Okay.
So I think I need a job. You cannot hang around for 9 months not doing anything.
Sure.
And at that time, for me, the ideal professional was working in organization like the United Nations.
Okay.
So I applied for a similar organization in Hong Kong. It's called the Equal Opportunity Commissions.
Yes.
But they offer me around 1,200 Aussie salary.
Yeah.
So I cannot have...
What, for a year?
For a month.
For a month.
Which
That's
that
not
is,
a lot.
it's hard to have a human...
In Hong Kong.
Yeah, it's hard to fight for human right when you cannot have your own right.
Yeah, you can't even survive.
So then by chance, a friend of mine said that Goldman Sachs was hiring. So I went for interview with Goldman for HR. For some reason, I got in. And then I worked in Goldman for 2 years before joining.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have the opportunity working in a very big, or maybe not big, but well-known kind of financial institution like that to dine at nice places? I'm just trying to. I'm interested to know when you kind of got interested in cuisine more.
I really honestly start getting into wine and dine after working. You're running Grace.
Sure. Okay.
Before that, no. I mean, before that, it was like I was in my 20s. It's all going to Lan Kwai Fong, drinking beers after night, right?
Yeah, of course.
And then just partying whenever you can, and all of a sudden, you're flying business class, staying 5-star hotels, all these things.
Yeah.
But wine and dine wasn't my thing back then.
So how old were you when Grace became?
I took over when I was 24.
24.
I was 22. Sorry.
Wow, it's very young.
I really didn't know what I was doing.
Okay, so how long had it been established before that?
My father founded the winery in '97.
Okay.
And we started to produce the first bottle of wine at the end of 2002. I took over before launching.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, my father was very kind. He always tell people that we are co-founders. So basically, I saw it from almost an infant stage because before that was mainly planting a vineyard. It was not wine yet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about how they decided where they would actually plant a vineyard?
My dad, very best friend, one of the best friend is a French guy, and he suggested my father to do the winery together.
Sure.
He got a professor from Bordeaux, one of the most famous professor, and traveled around China to look for locations. At that time, a lot of vineyard was planted in Shandong area, so basically on the coast.
Okay.
They went there, but they didn't think it's good. They think that was too humid.
Whereabouts?
Shandong is Qingdao. It's relatively up north because
further north.
Yeah,
on the
anything.
coast. Okay.
Anything in southern part is too humid.
Sure.
So they went relatively up north. It's kind of above Shanghai.
But even there was
Beijing area.
But even there was a little bit too hot.
Too humid.
Too humid still.
Because we always have summer rain.
Yep.
So they went further west, and then Shanxi was a location that they think is suitable, and that's how we started.
Can you tell me a little bit about what Shanxi is like?
Climate-wise, Shanxi is relatively dry.
Yes.
We have around 400 millimeters rainfall annually, and day and nighttime temperature is hugely different. Summer would be 35 in midday, 19 at night. Mm-hmm. And then sandy soil. But one of the huge difference compared to any, maybe beside Russia, anywhere else in the world, is that we have to bury the vines in winter with soil.
So why do you have to do that?
Because it can go down to 30 below zero a couple of nights, and the wind chill will dry the vines and kill it.
Okay. So how far away from the coast are we talking?
We are 600 kilometers southwest of Beijing.
600 kilometers.
Yeah, southwest of
To
Beijing.
the closest coast.
Beijing is not necessarily coast, but I think would be 1,800 from the coast.
So that's very, very continental.
Yes. Right below Inner Mongolia.
Yeah, okay. What's the elevation there?
800 above sea level.
Okay. So it's not really, really high, like, for example, in Argentina, in Mendoza and Salta.
Yeah, over 1,000, right?
But yes, but higher in many places. But that's a very continental, very dry climate as well. I think maybe even in Shanxi, that's
it
even
can be
further.
Yeah, further west would be maybe higher up.
Yeah.
This afternoon I was having a lunch with a friend, and she's Indian, and she was saying that it's possible, it's possible to plant grape in the Himalayas.
Wow.
I said, how high? Like 3,000 meters above sea level. I said, what about the temperature and sunlight? She said, sunlight, no problem.
Sure.
Rainfall, no problem. There's spring. Water is no problem with spring. And then we're just not sure about 3,000 above sea level. Is it possible?
I'm trying to remember what the highest
Mendoza is 1,000 something only,
Yeah.
not beyond 2,000.
But I think that they're like there's vineyards in Salta at more than 2,000 kilometers.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think so. 2,000 meters, I should say, not 2,000 kilometers.
Yes.
That would be in space.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did he decide, or how did the consultants, I guess, how did they discuss what vineyards to plant, what grapes?
Actually, when you choose grape, is temperature. Temperature and sunlight would kind of give you a guidance. But because it's a Bordeaux professor, obviously they go for the French varietals, the Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cab Franc, Chardonnay, and that's what we started with.
Sure.
But in the last 7 years, we imported other cuttings, other varieties.
Yep.
To try out in the soil. So we have Alianico, we have Maslan, we have, what is that called? We have Nebbiolo.
Wonderful. Is it difficult to import new cuttings?
China, since after we plant, they no longer allow imports. So we can only import as a research project, so basically very, very small quantity.
Sure.
Then you have to quarantine for a year or two.
Okay.
Then you put in a nursery to make it...
To propagate, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So initially it was French varieties.
Now we move to anything else that we can try out.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what were the decisions that were made to begin with as far as how the wines would be made?
Because my father friends hired this French guy who was a winemaker then. So basically the whole style was defined by him because we didn't know anything about
Sure,
wine.
of course.
But to be honest, I quite like it. I like the old world wine, and I guess that's why I like the Victorian wine.
Sure.
I don't like, very in-your-face, punchy type of wine. I like elegance.
Okay.
I like balance. I like acidity.
Okay.
And it happened that Grace Vineyard wine is more or less like that as well. We are not a big wine. We have sweetness from the fruit. We have acidity at the finish.
Sure.
And that's what I like. And then that's kind of our style.
Okay. If you've listened to recent episodes of the Vincast, you've probably heard me mention Wine Companion. Well, they've had a very interesting rebranding of late, and they have renamed to Halliday Wine Companion. And that, of course, is because James Halliday was the founder of Wine Companion, the annual guide to Australian wines, which evolved into a wine magazine and an amazing online wine resource. So as a special treat for listeners of this podcast, the team at Halliday have actually offered a very, very special discount for any subscription package. All you need to do is go to the Wine Companion website, put in the special code Intrepid30 at purchase, and you'll get a 30% discount on any subscription package, which is an amazing discount and a great way to read about all the wines around the world, but particularly wines in Australia. So thank you very much, Mr. Halliday and the Wine Companion team, for your support of this podcast.
So can you tell me a little bit about the wine market in China itself? Is most of the wine sold in China?
For us, yes, and for most of producers in China, also yes.
Yes.
I give you an example. I mean, we are producing around 1.2 million bottles a year.
Okay.
We sell everything, and I can sell everything in the province alone, not even the nations.
Okay.
The province is 35 million populations.
Sure.
So, it put in context, right?
So you only have to sell one bottle for every 3 people.
But then it's a mistake that one would make. I met a lot of producers overseas, and when they see China, it's like, oh my God, this huge market. The question that you have to ask yourself, let's say you are Australian wine maker or wine producer. Yes, your wine is great, but still, there's many Australian wine. Why you?
Yeah.
There is a lot of consumers, and doesn't mean that they have to buy your wine. And the interesting thing about the wine market in China is dynamic. Many reasons that make it very different than other markets is, one, we were introduced to wine pretty late in time. People used to drink Coca-Cola, and all of a sudden they jump to Lafite. It's not like in Europe, people start drinking wine when they're young age, and they trade up. No, in China it's like Coca-Cola and Lafite. So there's a leap. Secondly, with technology, people have information in their fingertips. They can check different things very quickly.
Okay.
And third, when in the last 10 years, the wine industry has boomed like crazy in China. Partially was because other markets in the world was not doing that well, and everybody eyes on China.
Of course.
And then when every countries are coming to China, it helped to educate the market.
Yeah. I mean, when they started to do Vinexpo in Hong Kong, it really did show that what the potential for not just China, but for Asia in general.
Yeah. But China, and in the last 10 years, it's like there is all these producers from France, there's all these producers from Chile, Australia, Spain, Italy, have been Italy in China, so everybody's there, and then that's why it gives the consumers a lot of different choices, and all of a sudden, from knowing nothing about wine to suddenly have many choices, make a huge difference.
How have the tastes in wine changed? The styles that have been popular, how have they changed?
I think they're much more, I mean, in comparison to Hong Kong is very French-driven. The taste palette is very French. China is very open, because look at the Chinese cuisine, we are pretty diverse.
Sure.
And I don't think that people particularly have a taste. Of course, then, if you have a stronger fruit and you have a barrel taste, people tend to pick it up as it's good quality, like the legs and the tears.
Yeah.
But I don't think necessarily the case.
If they can taste it, if it's strong and intense, that's a good thing. If it's more elegant, it's like, oh, I'm not sure I'm seeing value.
It takes time to appreciate, and it's like if you taste with Chinese drinkers sweet wine, everybody like it.
Yeah.
Nobody buy it.
No.
There's no occasion to drink it.
Sure.
And then they tell me that Chinese like softened thing. I told a lot of my friends it's not the case, because if you look at Chinese tea, it's very tannic.
Yes.
It's a matter of habit. We like tannic tea, so we can stand tannic wine. It's just that we need to get used to the tannic from wine.
Okay. I guess it's also the combination of the fruit as well. It's a kind of a very different experience.
Absolutely. I mean, fruity wine in general, not only China, everywhere is much more well received, right? Easier to drink.
But still in China, they drink a lot more red wine than white wine, for example?
Yeah, 90% red, 10% white.
Wow, okay. So, of course, there's been increased opportunities to import wine into China. What about companies, not just Chinese companies, but overseas companies investing in producing wine in China?
There are a few. I mean, for example, LVMH invested in Yunnan to do red wine.
Yes.
Shandong is doing sparkling wine in Ningxia.
Okay.
The Swarovski family has a winery as well. There's a Scottish guy doing red wine in the coastal area.
Yes.
There are a number of players producing wine in China.
And with the idea of, selling into the Chinese market?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. That's very interesting. So, what was it like when you started with Grace yourself and you started to take the wine into the market? How was it? Did you find it very difficult?
I knew nothing about anything. I didn't know wine. I couldn't drink. I don't know the varieties. I don't know how to sell.
So how did you learn?
It's almost feel like swimming in the ocean that you just try to stay alive.
Sure.
But you know, I often say that, and which I believe is timing. I was in the industry at the right time, so the upward movement was so strong. Even
Sure.
though I keep making mistake, but the pulling up was so strong. All the
Yes.
mistake was doesn't matter.
That's
And,
okay. It's a learning experience.
Yeah, but because everything was going up, and you ride along with the wave.
Sure.
And if I'm doing it today, when the things are more normal, and I was still like back then that I didn't know anything, Grace Vineyard would not survive. But I entered the market at the right time, and then also I think that we were. At that time, there was only a handful of wineries, so easy for people to remember. For consumer product, a brand is important, and people to remember you is better than they don't, right? And back then, there's no privately owned winery run by a young girl, and then they keep thinking because back then in China was not that international as well. The fact that I can speak English is already quite exotic. It's like this young girl doing wine can speak English. They keep saying that, oh, you can speak the bird language. But now in China, a lot of kids can speak English, French, German, and multiple languages. So
Do you think people took you more seriously because of that? Because you'd studied in America and you traveled a lot. They said, "Oh, she's very worldly. She understands Western culture a little bit."
At that time, actually, the image match. Wine was very foreign in China.
Sure.
The fact that you study in the state and then you have a more Western culture, they feel that, okay, you know what you're doing.
Sure.
Even though that I actually didn't know what I was doing.
So maybe they were so forgiving.
The perception for the customers
Yes.
feel that, okay, that's why they can do more elegant stuff because, it's in her blood that she knows, which was not true. But yeah, it worked then.
So who were some of the first customers and I guess did you have sort of people in the media talking about the wines or like
A few of our customers,
professionals?
which was actually make a huge difference. One is Peninsula Hotel in Hong Kong,
Okay.
and they were the first brave one to take on a Chinese wine on their list. Then Cathay Pacific, and Cathay Pacific lists us on first and business class. That was a very bold move as well.
Sure.
Because of that too, it funneled back to the province, because the province was very poor for many years,
Okay.
and then all of a sudden they started to become rich because of coal mining and things.
Yeah.
But they need something to show people that they have culture, and we are a perfect name card.
Sure.
So the people in the province love our brand because it's like, oh, show people that we're sophisticated. Look at us, we have a winery and things like that, and they love us.
Is there still very much a perception, possibly outside of the province, that this is just a farming thing? It's a very simple, it's very rural. Maybe it's a very poor kind of. Why would
Yes,
you do that?
I think
Shouldn't you be a professional?
Yes or no? I think in China, each province has its own image.
Yeah.
Shanxi province was coal mine owners,
Okay.
poor,
Yeah.
dirty, and so
Working with their hands.
Yeah. But I think the international recognition influence how people look at us.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, how did? Firstly, where did the name Grace come from? Is there much significance to this?
It's
name?
funny enough. People keep asking me. It's obviously not your mother's name, and it's not your name, even though people keep calling me Grace.
Okay.
And it's actually a translation of a Chinese name. The Chinese name is Pleasant Garden,
Okay.
and Grace is kind of a similar word for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also think that if you come up with a English name, it should make sense.
Yes.
I don't like picking an English name. It's just pronunciations that sound like a Chinese word and which have no meaning. That's very confusing then.
Sure. So, how did the business grow? And
We grow from when we make 1,000,000 bottles the first year, we sold 20,000 bottles, and 10,000 was given away for free. It was desperate. Think about it. And
Sure.
then we did a lot of changes. Second year is 100,000 bottles. The third is 300,000 bottles. 500,000 bottles, and we launched properly in 2003. By 2008, we are on allocation basis.
wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Yeah. Again, it's an upward trend.
And how do you find it? What ways do you try to always be improving as far as bringing in people to come and work for Grace, or sending employees out into the world to learn more about wine?
Everything. I think that is first of all, it's a mentality. Is that if you want to change, whether you feel like you can be better. So, of course, there's different things I do. I send my team outside to be doing harvest in different places. A lot in Victoria, actually.
Okay.
And there are a lot of people visiting us because they are interested in China, and we are probably one of the most approachable winery.
Yeah.
And then it's also like every vintage when we do the launch. Before we do the launch, we do blind tasting in the winery. I bring wine from Hong Kong in a similar price range to see whether we are competitive.
Okay.
Because if we are not, then we have to downgrade wine. At the same time, we also buy Grand Cru to see how far we are from them.
Sure. To give them something to.
Something that we can chase.
Yeah, of course.
So all these things are...
Look forward to.
But everything is about how you look at it.
Sure.
For years that we are on allocation basis, to be honest, I got lazy as well. I mean, you feel that you're top of the world in a way, right? And that's also the reason why I keep traveling. I want to see there are things that people do so much better than us.
Yes.
Then I can have a much more international view on things.
Okay.
And also for my team, that's why I keep sending them everywhere. And not only in the wine industry, we actually do a lot of visit in other industry businesses. Because I think that if we are so narrow-minded, we're always in this industry, especially wine. We like to talk among ourselves. We don't like to talk to people.
Yeah.
That's not good. I think it's important to get out, to see other things.
Do you export any of the wine at the moment?
We do a little bit in Japan, Singapore, a little bit in UK, but not much. I think make in China is still very difficult.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
So you were here partly for the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. Yourself and Roy Moorfield hosted a very intimate tasting over the weekends, and there was also a dinner. How have you found the perception of the wines from China? What do you think it was that brought people to come and find out more about the Chinese wines?
To be honest, I was surprised that people come.
Why? It's so exotic now.
Yeah,
European wines. Oh, we know about that. Let's try some wines from China.
Yeah. I think that if there's so many wines in the world now.
Yes.
Even for me to go to a wine tasting, it has to draw me.
Sure.
A strong draw.
Sure.
So I was very surprised with the boardroom tasting. People are actually quite sophisticated.
Yeah.
And most importantly, I think people come with a very open mind.
Yeah, of course. Very important.
That was honestly not common. I was in China, I was in Hong Kong. Even when I did it in UK, people was not as open-minded as I felt that Sunday afternoon.
Do you think people came with sort of preconceived notions, or they sort of wanted to prove this idea that they had that you couldn't make good wine in China?
A lot of time people come with relatively open mind. They want to try, but if there is something they pick up that they don't like, then they will say, "Oh, see,
yeah,
the Chinese wine."
I proved it, of course.
Yeah. Oh,
I knew that.
It's short on palate. See this and that. I understand that. I think that I would do the same thing. I think, to be honest, if you think about all the wine that you drink, name something that you really like the wine taste without knowing the label.
Of course.
To be honest, a lot of time the label make a huge difference.
Yeah, or where it comes from, or what the grape is. But I know that it is, of course, it's almost impossible to taste the wine and not think about it. in relation to something else. Even if you're just doing a tasting, you are tasting a wine compared to the wine you just tasted. How if it has more or less alcohol, if it has more or less tannin, if it has more or less acid. I think it's very, very difficult to come in completely open-minded and to look at a wine purely for what it is, not this Chardonnay
It's
is
very
very
tough.
different to Burgundy, or it's not as good as Chardonnay from Australia or New Zealand.
Exactly. It's also like when people, if you are introduced to some expert that you admire, tell you about that wine, and she or he thinks it's good,
Yes.
you tend to follow that.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. Of course. So, what do you have for the future for Grace?
We're doing sparkling wine.
That's
we just
exciting.
launched last year, so that was exciting. That's still very exciting. We are venturing into whiskey,
Wow.
becoming more and more alcoholic, I guess. And
But
that's
also seeing the market potential. Whiskey is, I'm sure, is very
huge
strong in
market
China.
potential, and if we are, and I love whiskey for years, so it will be something that I would love to do, and hopefully I actually wanted to venture into China spirit,
Okay.
because China spirit, every province has their own spirit,
Yes.
but unfortunately that nobody really try to make a quality spirit. They're all about branding, distributions, story. I think there is a nice spirit from China with history would be very interesting.
What would you make the spirit from?
Depending on where your locations,
Okay.
it can either be rice or grain, and every province have a very different spirit.
Interesting.
But now, they are always talking about volume, and nobody focus on quality. I think it's a pity,
That is a shame.
and it's also considered as old people drink. So if I can repackage it in a way, make a quality product, it's almost feel like a mission.
Yeah, of course. I guess, with the spirits, the branding is even stronger, I think, than wine. So
Yes.
to kind of try and get people to taste a whiskey that's not from Scotland or from Ireland, or to try it.
Whiskey is interesting
consider
because
that-
I like wine. I like whiskey. I like, but the Chinese spirit, I have much more sentimental feelings toward
Of course. Judy, I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
For sparing some time whilst you're here. I hope you have enjoyed your time or your return to Australia and Melbourne. We've had some very
And
lovely
I hope you
warm
guys
weather.
come to visit us at some point. And then
I'm fascinated.
You can add us in Grace Vineyard on Facebook. Then if you guys come, we have
Yes.
11 guest rooms. Come and stay with us.
Wonderful. Do you have any other social media for Grace?
We have Instagram and Facebook,
Yeah.
and of course the WeChat and Weibo in China.
Yeah. I don't think anyone uses Weibo outside of China.
Yes.
Maybe we should.
Yes.
But thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for listening to another episode of the Vincast. I have been James Scaresbrook, otherwise known as the Intrepid Wino. And of course, thank you very much to Judy for her time on the show. I hope you enjoyed our chat. If you'd like to follow me, I'm on social media. On Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Intrepid Wino. And you can follow the podcast on Twitter at The Vincast. Head to facebook.com/Intrepid Wino and like my Facebook page where I share links and photos and lots of interesting stuff. And why not come and visit me on YouTube? I'm at the Intrepid Wino channel, and you can see some of my Let's Taste videos where I taste Australian wines. I would love for you to come and subscribe to the Vincast. You can do that on a number of different platforms, but probably the best one is on iTunes. If you go to the Vincast iTunes page, hit that subscribe button so you get the newest episode as soon as it becomes available. And it's a really great way to provide some feedback by leaving a 5-star rating and a review about an episode or a guest that you might have enjoyed, or perhaps even some feedback, someone you'd like to hear on the show. All that information, of course, is available at intrepidwino.com, including different ways you can get in contact with me. There's lots of different writings that I've done in the past as well, so if you'd like to learn more about me, that's a great place to visit. I look forward to having you on the next episode of the Vincast, but until then, bye.